The message today is seeking godly kingdom. Now, motherhood is probably one of the toughest things in life. It should be right up there with fatherhood. Just kidding. Just kidding. But motherhood is something that sometimes we take for granted. It used to be in the old days that mothers would stay home and the father would go out and work, and the father would go out and be the provider. But so many women have joined the workforce today, and for various reasons. Some do it because they want to be independent. Others do it because of the necessity of having two salaries in a family because of the high cost of living. And so a lot of mothers now, not only do they have to go out to work, but they have to come home, cook, clean, do laundry. And I gotta say that a lot of men today are stepping up and helping in the house, but it's still not equal. And even though marriage is a partnership, mothers still have a lot more things to do than the men. You know, there's a lot of single parents today. There's a lot of mothers who have to go to work because they're single parents and the father might not be around, or the father doesn't provide as much as he should. And so there are many reasons why mothers go to work today, and one of the things that we have to understand is that no matter whether you're raising boys or girls, mothers are usually more apt or more equipped to do that. And now I'm not saying that every mother is that way, because there are many men who are able to raise their kids on their own. But I think it's a lot more harder, for example, for a man to raise a daughter, right? I think it's easier for a woman to raise a boy than a man to raise a girl, for obvious reasons. That said, I'm not saying that men can raise girls or women can raise boys. It's just the difficulty of raising a child on your own. But the love that a mother has for a child, it surpasses even the love that a father will have for a child a lot of times. And mothers are willing to do whatever it takes for their kids. When King Solomon took over the kingdom, he only asked God for one thing, and that was wisdom. God decided to give him all the wisdom that he gave him, and he also decided to give him riches. And God gave him the riches because he didn't ask for anything else but wisdom in order to be able to deal with the Jews in that time. And we're going to see in these verses the godly wisdom that Solomon had in dealing with a very difficult situation. Let's go to 1 Kings 3, 16 to 28. 1 Kings 3, 16 to 28. And it says, now two women who were harlots came to the king and stood before him. And one woman said, "Oh, my lord, this woman and I dwell in the same house, and I gave birth while she was in the house. Then it happened the third day after I had given birth that this woman also gave birth. And we were together. No one was with us in the house, except the two of us in the house. And this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. So she arose in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while your maidservant slept, and laid him in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I rose in the morning to nurse my son, there he was dead. But when I examined him in the morning, indeed he was not my son who I had born." Then the other woman said, "No, but the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son." And the first woman said, no, but the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son. Those that spoke before the king. And the king said, the one says, this is my son who lives, and your son is dead, is the dead one. And the other says, no, but your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. Then the king said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword before the king, and the king said, divide the living child in two, and give half to one, and the other half to the other. The woman whose son was living spoke to the king, for she yearned with compassion for her son. And she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him. But the other said, let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him. So the king answered and said, give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is his mother. And all of Israel heard of the judgment which the king had rendered, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was with him to administer justice. Amen. Gracious Father, we thank you, Lord, for this message. We thank you, Lord, for the wisdom that you give us to deal with our everyday life. And I just pray, Lord, that the words that we're about to hear, Lord, be your words and not mine. That you continue, Lord, to bless us with knowledge and wisdom, so that we can be an example to others and for others to follow. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. My first point is, mothers protect their child. Now, these two mothers were prostitutes. And they probably gave birth to children who were born out of a sinful relationship, out of a sinful situation. They were both living in the same house. They had both given birth 3 days apart. But while one mother was sleeping, the other one, who had smothered her child while sleeping, decided, well, I'm just going to take hers. So she took her dead child, put it in the other one's bosom, and she took the other child and put it under hers. Instead of grieving the death of her child, right, the first thing I would do if I lose a child is grieve. But there was an evil intent in this woman. And that evil intent was seen that instead of grieving for her child, she decided to just put it on the other woman's chest and take hers. Now, when the woman of the living child woke up and she was about to nurse him, she realized, well, this is not my child. Now, every woman knows their child. Every woman, as soon as that child is born, you could put him among 20 kids, she's going to know which one is hers. That's just the way it is. And so that other woman knew that that was her child, and she brought this situation before King Solomon. And in those days, the king was the one that decided in certain matters, certain situations. They usually had judges that took care of all the things. But when it came to a matter like this, where a judge would have difficulty making that decision, he came before the king. Because the king was the one that was supposed to be the wisest person within them. And in verse 22, it says, then the other woman said, no, but the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son. And the first one said, no, but the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son. So when they come before the king, this woman explains to the king the situation that happened. And she seemed to be able to give the king a very detailed description of what happened. And she seemed to have done it in a manner that was very respectful. But this other woman, all she could think about was, I'm not going to be without a child. Let her be without a child. And so she says, no, the dead one is your son, the living one is my son. But the first woman was not having it. The love for her child was so strong, she wasn't just going to give him away. And she says the same thing, no. The dead one is yours, the living one is mine, right? So now, she's not as peaceful as she was when she first spoke to the king. Now she's not only is she getting upset, but she's being stern about making sure that she gets her child. Now, if you have ever spoken, I don't know if any of you have ever spoken to a prostitute. I have. and they are very ghetto, right? So the way they speak is very ghetto. They don't speak like you and me. Their life is so hard. They have had such a hard life in the streets that when you speak to them, you can tell that they're borderline crazy most of the time. Because they're willing to do whatever it takes to survive. They're out there surviving in the streets. They get beaten, they get hurt, they get abused, they get taken advantage of. And so they have this like skin that is so hard. Their heart has hardened so much that they will defend themselves at any cost. And what they want, they're going to get. Whether it's real, whether it's not real, whether it's truthful, whether it's lying, they do whatever they need to do to get what they want. And so what I'm looking at is a woman here who's willing to do whatever she can do to get what she wants. She had a child, she lost it, now she wants a child, she's going to take whoever's child she can take. And so it just so happened that the other woman was right with her. And she was not going to, again, the ghetto came out of the first woman when the other one tried to take her child. She said, I'm not giving him up. I'm not going to give him away. And she responds in the same way to King Solomon. Because she's feeling threatened now. Her child is being threatened. And so she has to do whatever it takes to keep that child from being taken away. In verses 24 and 25, however, the king said, bring me a sword. So they brought a sword before the king, and the king said, divide the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other. Now, no mother who loves her child is going to allow her child to be taken away. But at the same time, no mother who loves her child wants to see their child dead. And so this woman loved her child so much that when the king said, let's cut him in half, her instincts took over. And she says, I don't want to see this happen to my child. This is not going to happen to my child. You know, it takes me back to Proverbs 22:6. Proverbs 22:6 said, train a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. A mother wants to raise a child that will follow certain beliefs and follow certain norms and is raised in certain ways. I know mothers in the Dominican Republic who were prostitutes, who have raised child to be doctors, lawyers, engineers, and even today computer whiz, because they don't want to see, you know, there are women who prostitute themselves in order to raise kids. They can't find a job that's going to pay them enough, and they think that that's the solution. They don't know how to do something else, or they don't want to do something else because they think that that's the way to do it. And that's unfortunate, because they have to live a sinful life in order to bring bread to the table. And they don't really have to do that. There's other ways of doing it. But some women in the world, because they're so lost in the world, they believe that this is the only way that they can survive. And so they go out and prostitute themselves, and then they go home and they act like, you know, the neighbors think that she's the best mother in the world, that she's the best woman in the world. And they don't know what they do at night. They don't know what they do, you know, when they're not home. But there are women who find this course as being the only solution to their problem. And that should not be the only solution. So they don't want to see their children suffering. They don't want to see their children hungry. And so they resort to this kind of living. I mean, there are other ways of earning food for your table and then, you know, to pay your rent or whatever. And in this country especially, I could see that happening in third world countries. That happens a lot, where women do these things. And in many cases, that's the only solution. In many cases, which is sad. In many cases, that's their only solution, is to prostitute themselves. Unfortunately, that's what the third world countries do to women. And it's very unfortunate. However, especially in this country, there's many ways of doing it without having to do that. But the true mother is going to protect the child no matter what she has to suffer through, no matter what she has to go through. So you want to train your child in the way that he should go, but at the same time you want to protect him from whatever is going to come. And so instead of just deciding that, if she can have him, I can't have him, she gives him up. And in verse 26, 25, 26, I believe it is, he says, then the woman whose son was living spoke to the king, for she yearned with compassion for her son, and she said, "Oh my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him." But the other said, "Let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him." If that was her child, she would never have said that. Never it be mine or yours, divide him. But the other one had compassion, right? Compassion. That's a very strong word that we don't use enough today. That's a word that we have to really keep in our vocabulary. We have to have compassion for people. And this mother had compassion for her child. We have to have compassion for mothers who are struggling. We have to have compassion for people who we see in the streets. We have to have compassion for people who are trying to live a better life and can't because of circumstances. We have to have compassion for the soldiers coming back from war. We have to have compassion for our neighbors that we see struggling. We have to have compassion for the disabled. This woman had compassion for her child. And she was willing to suffer whatever consequences she needed to suffer in order to keep her child from being split in half. The other one, she didn't care because it wasn't a child. She didn't care. Split him in half. He's not going to even be hers or mine. And this is where King Solomon's wisdom came in, right? Because if he hadn't decided to do that, they probably would have never found out who the mother was. But because he had the wisdom that God had given him to say, bring me a sword, let's split him in half, he knew that the real mother would really stand up. And the real mother did. If the other one knew that was her child, she would have fought for him tooth and nails to keep him alive. But she didn't. She just gave him up. Wisdom is something that we need to acquire in order to make the right decisions, in order to survive the madness that we live in today. Because we have to make certain decisions in life today that sometimes is not popular with other people. But when we have godly wisdom, we're able to make those decisions, regardless of the consequences. My second point is called God-given wisdom. The God-given wisdom. In verse 27, it says, so the king answered and said, give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is the mother. So the decision that Solomon made was made easy because the real mother stood up to say don't kill him. She had compassion on the child. She had mercy on the child. She didn't want to see him dead. But the other one showed her true colors. And she showed that it wasn't her child because she didn't care for him. So Solomon was able to determine this. And I don't believe that Solomon's intention was to kill the child at all. It was just to find out the truth. And once he made that decision, he says that the people were in awe. They were in awe of the decision that he had made. Because the way he did it showed the people that he was the kind of leader that they needed. That he was the kind of judge they needed. That when they needed justice, they knew that he was going to provide justice. Today you go to court and you don't even know if justice is going to be served. You get a summons because some cop decided to give you a summons for no reason, and you don't know if justice is going to be served. Because even though you bring the truth to court, if that police officer lies in court, you don't know if justice is going to be served. Now, I'm not saying that every ticket we get is because the cop is lying, because most of the time they're right. Most of the times that a police officer stops you and gives you a summons is because you earned it. You deserved it. But sometimes you get one or two bad apples out there and they give you a summons for no reason. And so we have to be careful and ask God for wisdom in those situations. I was laughing watching a video of a 65-year-old woman who the police officer stopped and was she had been driving without a license for 6 months, and she admitted it to the police officer. She had been driving without a license for 6 months. And the officer caught it on his camera, on his personal camera. And the woman said she would not get out of the car when the police officer asked her to step out. And she would not sign the ticket that he was asking her to sign. And then she takes off and he has to go after her. Long story short, he had to tase her in order to get her handcuffed because she was fighting. She was trying to kick him, and I mean, it was crazy. And at the end, when she's finally calm, after they tase her and handcuff her, they asked her, why did she run? And she said, because she was a country girl. That was her answer. Because I'm a country girl. So that's why she fought her, because she was a country girl. And the officer said to her, you just made a situation much worse than it should have been. And sometimes we do that in life. Sometimes we make situations in our lives much worse than they should be, because we don't use the godly given wisdom that God has given to us. We make situations worse because we don't do the right thing. We make situations worse because we decide to do what we want to do. And so we don't have the godly wisdom that has been given to us sometimes to make those decisions. We have to pray that we can see the godly wisdom that has been given to us, that we can use it to make the right decisions, to do the right things, to do good for others, and to take care of others. The last verse in 1 Kings is 28, and he says, and all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had rendered, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was with him, was in him to administer justice. And sometimes it only takes one decision that we make for others to recognize our leadership skills. Sometimes when we make a certain decision, it lets other people know how good a leader you are or how bad a leader you are. And so when you make decisions based on the wisdom of God, others will see the way that he has led you. One mother had godly wisdom to make the right decision, the other one didn't. King Solomon had the wisdom to suggest what he suggested about the child, and because of that, now the nation of Israel knew that he was the right king for them, and that he was the person that they needed to lead them. One woman had compassion for the child, the other one was greedy about the child. And she was so greedy to the point that she was willing to see him die. In closing, I'm going to say this. James 3:17 says this, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceful, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, and without hypocrisy. Now the wisdom that comes from God is usually pure, peaceful, and gentle. You will never get bad wisdom from God. That comes from the enemy. The enemy is going to try and put things in your head that are not godly. The mother of the child exhibited those first three things. She was pure of heart when she spoke to the king. She was peaceful when she spoke to the king, and she was gentle when she spoke about her child. The other one didn't have any of those things. And on top of that, she was willing to yield her child to the other woman so that her child would not be taken away. So she also had that. She was also full of mercy, because she was merciful with her child. The other one was a hypocrite. And this verse truly describes these two women. It truly describes the first woman in the first part and the last woman, the second woman in the last part. She had no partiality. She just wanted the child. And she was willing to let him go. She was willing to let him be split in half. And she was a hypocrite because it wasn't her child. She was lying through her teeth, right? I ask you all today to seek godly wisdom, to seek God's knowledge in order to make the right decisions. Many parents today are raising children on their own, and they need godly wisdom to raise those children to walk in a godly way. They need to be able to teach the kids the godly way to live. They need to be able to point those children in the right direction. Sometimes one parent is a Christian, the other one is not, and the Christian parent is the one that needs to teach that child the godly way. If you read the story of Timothy, his father was Greek, his mother was Jewish, and between his mother and his grandmother, they taught him how to walk in a godly way. The Christian parent is the one that has to deal with raising the children in a godly way. I ask you to ask God to give you the wisdom to raise your children in the right way and to keep them safe. Wisdom from God will always allow you to make the right decision for your child. Wisdom from God will always allow you to make the right decisions in your home. Wisdom from God will always allow you to make the right decisions at work. Wisdom from God will allow you to give your child the opportunity for a better future. We need to raise children to love God, to know God, and to be fearful of God. So that when they grow up, they will live a life that pleases God. But more importantly, when they have their own children, they'll raise them in a godly way. Let's pray.